You're just coming in on Thanksgiving tomorrow. There are a lot of special events coming up. There are guest lectures next Tuesday and Wednesday, which I highly recommend tuning into. They're worth extra credit. This is Caitlin talking about radio attacks, and then Kaz talking about Kubernetes attacks. Both extremely important technologies, very interesting to hear what they're doing. And then on Saturday comes the invitational. It'll be in this room, Science 37, on site. Anybody can come. You do not need to pre-register. There was a form to sign up on my site, but I took it down because we have enough people that signed up officially. More people could just show up at the time. You do not need to pre-register. And if you show up here, we'll be here all day. You'll be defending networks against Caitlin. Caitlin is the one that is the red team that will be attacking you. So, there may be others, but she's one of them. So you have to come through the south door because the building is officially shut. I'll just prop open the south door so you can sneak in. And that's the plan. So show up for that if you're interested. That's also worth extra credit if you care. And 160 is where we are, and we're just down to another bit of this chapter about the information security program. And this is the last chapter we're going to cover from this book in this course, because all there is the guest lecture next week, and then not going to add anything new on the last class. I'll just be here to help people that want help on anything. So let's take a look at this management stuff. All right. So, information security program development. Here's what we're going to do: external partnerships, compliance, personnel, project management, budget, business and vendors, and then event monitoring and vulnerability management. All right. So, you can have external partnerships with other organizations, and you have to have them. For example, law enforcement. This is why it is a very good idea for security professionals to arrange to have a relationship with law enforcement before there is an incident. That's why you should join a group like I'm in the Heimtech Crime Investigators Association and InfraGuard. It is a good thing for any security professional to have contacts with law enforcement so that when something happens, you know somebody you can talk to in law enforcement, the FBI, something like that. There's a lot of these groups out there for professionals to join.
Wouldn't the law enforcement turn you in?
What's that?
Wouldn't the law enforcement turn you in?
Oh, well, will they turn you in? Well, I suppose in principle they might, but the point is you want somebody you can talk to about incidents. I mean, I don't think...
You talk to them, you give out all the evidence.
Well, you know, if you're guilty, then I guess you wouldn't call them, but the point is you call them when there's a professional problem at work. And, you know, I remember one time I did get a call. They called me and said, I'm Agent Flannery from the FBI, and your name came up in one of our investigations. And I just sort of sat there quietly. He said, well, not in a bad way. It's because they found out about one of the guys that hacked the colleges to punish me for teaching this class, in fact. Well, a related class, the CISSP class. There was a guy that got his gang of black hat hackers to hack the college to try to stop me from teaching that course. And they caught him and wanted to punish him. But I told them he hadn't really done a lot of harm, and that deflated them. So I think they didn't anyway. But anyway, he did, in fact, do a little bit of damage to my website and such. Wasn't a big deal. But anyway, all right, so then you have regulators. These are the government agencies that regulate your business, like the bank agencies and such, and then there's auditors that audit you from the outside, and you have to cultivate a partnership relationship with these people. If you see them as your adversaries, then life is just going to be hard. I mean, the fact is you have to run your business in compliance with regulations, and you have to do a good job of accounting for what you do so you can be audited. So, you know, these people are not your enemies. They are helping you do what you need to do. And if you can keep it friendly, it's much better than, you know, trying to sneak things past them and hide things from them and all that jazz. All right, so then there's standards organizations like PCI for payment cards, Cloud Security Alliance, Information Security Forum, ISO, the international one, and IEC, which is, I think, a similar international group. These all have various standards that we've talked to, like SOC certification and so on. And so you often have to meet their standards. And then there's the professional organizations that develop these certifications we're getting. ISACA develops the CISM and CISA certification, CISM being the one this course is pointed at. ISSA is another one. There's a branch in San Francisco. I hear about it now and then. Sometimes my students are involved with it. And ISC squared is the one that makes the CISSP certification and quite a few others. And there's a Cloud Security Alliance. There's EC Council that developed Certified Ethical Hacker, and that is greatly respected by the U.S. Army. Not too many other people, but the U.S. Army likes it. And SANS, of course, is greatly respected by everybody. They have these fantastic training courses and a ton of certifications, and everybody agrees it's top quality training. The only problem is it's very expensive. It costs like $5,000 or $6,000 to take a class. So you only want to take a SANS class when your boss is paying for it. But that's the way a lot of people do spend their training budget for their company is on SANS courses, and it's widely considered to be a good investment that you actually get good value out of those courses. So the other thing you have is vendors. Once you become any kind of person involved in a corporation making decisions, you will have vendors constantly trying to get you to buy their stuff. And so you have to develop relationships with the vendors. And there are also vendors that offer services you don't have in-house, like a CISO or CISO advisor. Often people do not have a security team. Instead, they get a managed service provider that provides security services from outside their company. And they can help you install and arrange your strategy, set up security tools, and so on. If you don't have your on-site security team, which a lot of small and medium businesses do not. So you have your security products selling you firewalls and antivirus and suites and all that jazz. And this is tough. It's constantly changing, and there are always people trying to sell you stuff, and you have to become a careful shopper and try to determine how to get the right good stuff and not waste your money on the bad stuff, because these companies come and go and often vanish and leave their products abandoned. All right, then you got compliance, of course. You have to conform to policies, standards, regulations, and so on. One of my financial companies I consult for has dozens of pages with hundreds of internal policies. Anything you write has to meet all these internal policies, which are perfectly fine, and everybody has external policies they have to follow that come from regulatory agencies and such. Your security manager has to decide if all your actions conform to those things. Your information systems, your processes, and how you handle personnel all have to conform to those things. In San Francisco, about a decade ago, they put in ShotSpotter to detect gunshots, and therefore they connected the administrative network of the San Francisco government to the police network of the San Francisco government. And since that network was connected to police, the official requirement is that any administrator over that network had to have a background check, and that led to a huge scandal because the person running the network of the non-police network had 4 felony convictions for armed robbery and had concealed that fact. And he shut down the whole network and locked everybody out for several months, trying to avoid having a background check expose this. So it's the sort of thing. Your personnel also have requirements on them. So there's 2 general attitudes. One attitude some companies have is that this is all just a waste of time, pointless bureaucratic nonsense, and they just want to do the minimum and check the box just so they can say they complied, and they don't actually think it does them any good, which is quite common. Real security professionals often get mad and complain about this, but that is one thing that happens. There are people who just don't care about security, and the general consensus of the experts I've talked to is that if you have a company like that, you just have to wait for them to get hacked. They'll care after they get hacked. Anyway, after they get hacked and wake up, then they'll start actually caring about security, and instead of just doing the bare minimum to get by, they'll start taking it seriously. But usually, there's a period of time before that when they think it's not going to happen to them, and they think it's a waste of time. So you have different standards here, and so all of them apply to your data center. The electronic medical records would apply to HIPAA and the ISO standard, but not to SOC 2, not to PCI. That would focus on payment records and so on. So the various parts of your company may have standards they have to fulfill for compliance. So there's compliance risk. The simplest risk is if you fail to comply, then there might be a fine or a sanction. A fine for not complying, and of course, then you might have more chance of getting hacked if you don't comply. Presumably, the idea is that complying with the standards would make you more secure, and if you don't comply with the standards, you're more likely to be hacked. It's, of course, not perfectly true, but that is the idea. So you enforce compliance with audits to see what is really happening at your company and see how it compares to what should be happening, self-assessments, and other examinations, and this will detect risks, and it will also detect areas in which you are not in compliance. Almost nobody is perfectly in compliance. It's a moving target, and you do the best you can. It's like you might like to think you could perfectly obey the law and have no legal exposure, but that's impossible. There are so many laws and so many things to go wrong that everybody has some risk of getting sued by somebody for something. Like the college here seems to be a sort of wholly benevolent, beneficial organization that provides free classes to everybody, and yet they got sued because the walkways were considered too steep for handicapped accessibility, and they had to replace them with less steep walkways and stuff. There's always something like that that will come up. Even when you think you're doing nothing wrong, there's probably some aspect of your organization that is not in compliance. And then personnel management. There's a huge shortage of cybersecurity workers, 2 or 3 million less than people want to hire, which is why this is a good thing to learn, to get a job. It's hard to find workers and it's hard to retain them. If they're any good, they expect to get promoted, and they usually can't get promoted at your company, so they jump to another company. If you can actually have a promotion path within your company, then you can hold on to people, but most organizations do not have that, so everybody jumps ship every year or two. Nobody stays at one company for too long. Yeah.
In the malware companies, they also have turnover like 2 years.
I think so, yes. As far as I know, essentially all tech companies do, with a very few exceptions.
Well,
I think.
Malware.
Oh, you mean the criminals?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't think anybody really knows. No, I think they have.
Somebody try to get interview in there, and then they find out, and then put out a report.
Yeah, well, I would imagine they'd have a high turnover because they probably keep getting prosecuted and have to leave and fight, and they betray each other and steal the money and stuff. Yeah, I would assume criminals have a higher turnover.
No, the same, about 2 years.
The same, yeah, it could be, yeah. Anyway, so you can have a role which describes your job, like security analyst, or you can have a responsibility, which is like a more detailed thing in a role, which is you have the specific duty of doing the weekly scans, doing the risk assessments, and so on. So the security manager is what determines the roles and job titles. The security manager makes a plan of how we're going to secure the company, so they figure out what's going on, figure out what needs to be done, and then they decide what skill levels and subject matter are required, and they assign their staff. You do this and you do that. That's the job of the manager, to arrange the staff like pieces on a chessboard so that they accomplish the goals. Which is why, as I've talked about, when companies get hacked, they oftentimes try to blame the low-level worker who didn't put on a patch. But that's not the whole story. That worker may in fact not have done their job, but the manager also didn't do their job, because it's their job to organize their staff so the work gets done and review them to make sure the work did get done. So if an important thing is not getting done, the manager is at fault for not managing that team better. All right, and so you got a job description that will describe the knowledge requirements and responsibilities and other requirements for a job. And then, of course, there's culture. This is the sort of informal thing, the practices, communication style, ethics, etc. I've seen this happen in ethics very much. If the boss is sort of hypocritical and selfish, then everybody gets the message and they all act that way. If the boss is like honest and professional, then they get the message and they act that way. They really set the standard. A lot of organizations, like I said, don't think information security is important. They just think it's a waste of time, a legal requirement. So you have to determine what you can do. The fact is, if you want to encourage a culture of security, it is a matter of persuading people and influencing people as much as you can. It's not just a technical issue. It's an issue of figuring out what the culture at the company is and what you can do and how far you can go. And of course, professional development is very important. You have to keep learning. If you keep any of the certifications like CISSP, you will have professional requirements for training every year. The adversaries are constantly changing, so we have to keep changing our defenses. And like I say, career paths, most people jump ship every year or two, because typically you cannot get a promotion where you are, so you go to another company. And by the way, that's good for you anyway, because you'll get experience with another company, see different tools, a different situation. You'll learn more by moving to another company. And you can specialize in any of these things like risk analysis, malware analysis, penetration testing, mobile device or telecommunication security, forensics, cryptography, third-party risk, privacy. There are many, many specialties. Security is huge. And there's a lot of certifications out there, of course. Security Plus, entry-level awareness. Then there's a more technical one called CISSP, SSCP from ISC squared. There's SANS, EC Council, Cloud Security Alliance. All these have certifications. These ones are not tied to a specific vendor. And here's more of them. Certified Secure Software Lifecycle Professional for software development. And there's ISACA certifications like the one I'm doing here, CISM, and others. And then there's vendor certification tied to your product for Checkpoint, for guidance software, which I think is in case, for Radware, for Metasploit, and white hat. Every product, almost every product has a certification program and running just that one product, and that's often valuable. And of course, there's the Dilbert cartoon. Dilbert eventually decided to get red-pilled and canceled, but he certainly understood tech before that, and this is the common situation. Dilbert wants to get a certification, but the boss refuses to pay because if I pay for your certification, you'll get a better job. This really happens. There are a lot of companies that have a plan of just hiring their staff, not letting them get certifications, and hoping they will remain valuable for a few years. They can fire them and just hire more staff. That's why part of why people jump. They hire you, then they don't treat you right, so you just go to the next place. And you know, if you're new in the business, that's all right. Get a year or two of experience and move on. That's beneficial. But you know, if you actually wanted to hold on to your staff, you'd have to treat them better. And there are some companies that do this. Drive Savers give 6 weeks of paid training a year, and they have people that have stayed there for 20 and 30 years. They do take care of their people. They let them learn new things. They let them get promoted. And so people are happy to stay at one company if they get treated right, but you have to treat them right because these valuable people have other jobs they could get. And Splunk, for example, is a company that treats people right. They have one of the highest satisfaction ratings in the world. And I read a comment that said they had the 4th highest paying company in the world at one point. So anyway, people are very happy working at Splunk. Their product is very expensive and very good, sort of like Apple, so they have a lot of money, so they treat their staff very well to keep that product high quality. So let's take a look at a Kahoot. I should have them here. All right, for D1. By the way, another thing in that Dilbert cartoon, which I actually did, which I highly recommend, is he just went to training and paid for it himself. If the boss won't do it, that is the right thing to do. I did the same thing. They threatened to fire me at the college in one of their cutbacks, so I went and paid for myself for some training and got jobs elsewhere and got certifications. I said, well, I better make myself more valuable, so that's what I did. That's the right response. Don't let your company hold you back. If they are idiots, that doesn't mean you have to let them control you, and you don't have to hate them either. You can just say, well, then I'll leave, but I'll leave on my terms by getting education and moving on to a better job. All these certifications mean, you know, that you can easily find ways to improve yourself and make yourself more valuable and open up more opportunities for you. So I highly recommend getting them if you're in the job market or if you want to move forward. All right. All right, so who developed the CISSP cert? This is the one people most want to see on your resume. The most valuable one by far, typically. ISC squared. All right. All right, so a task like run weekly scans, what is that? Yeah, that's a responsibility assigned to some worker. Okay. So which certification covers software development? That was at the CSSLP. It's software lifecycle something. So interesting issue. I'm actually now teaching some of this, but I don't have that cert. Maybe I should get it. Anyway. All right, which cert comes from SANS? The GIAC certs come from SANS, and they're widely respected. It's just that they're expensive to get. All right. project and program management. So if you have a project, this happens all the time at companies. A project is some kind of change, so you have to do something like, for example, at the college, they rolled out new machines, upgrading from a previous mismatch of different machines to standardizing on Windows XP at all the administrative offices. And that took like 6 months to do. It does take a time. So you have to figure out how you're going to do it, and then you have to manage it carefully. And there's program management, which is the management of several concurrent projects. And there are special certifications just for that. Project management professional, and so on. And then budgeting. You have to include everything, the staff, training, equipment, software, support, which is a big issue. I know, for example, if you buy, we bought HP switches as the backbone of the City College network, and they failed, and they couldn't get replacements, and they finally got replacements, the replacements failed, and then they said, forget it, and they went up to Cisco switches, which cost twice as much. But Cisco switches all come with gold standard service. They guarantee that if you have any problem, you can call them, and they will, if necessary, fly somebody on site with a replacement who will set it up for you and make it work. They take care of you. That's why you pay more for it. And so the combination of the cost and the support probably makes it a better value to pay the high price and get Cisco than to get the cheaper stuff from HP without as much support. But that would depend on your tolerance for downtime. Anyway, and then you got travel, contingencies, documents and records. These are all things that affect the actual total cost of your project. And then, this is the hard thing, you'd like to specify what the return is on security investment. Your board of directors would like you to say, if you want some money to do some kind of security program, how much money is that going to save us or bring in? And the problem is, you can't usually say that. You can't say, it's not going to directly bring in any money. It's not going to make you sell more product or have more customers. It's not even clear that it's going to save you money, because it's hopefully going to prevent you from getting hacked, but you can't prove that you would have gotten hacked, and you don't know how much damage the hack would do. And by the way, it might not prevent you getting hacked either. So it's tough to convince hard-nosed accounting types that security is worth it. It's a fundamental problem. It's getting easier as everybody gets hacked more and more often. They're more willing to just take it on faith that we do need to do something, but it's not a science where they can easily consider one program versus another and have any really data-driven plan of why this is a better protection than that or a better value, because it's so hard to determine how much actual monetary value you got from a security program. All right, so you make a business case. If you want to do some business investment, you have to make a case to justify it and go to management. And this explains why we should do this, why it would benefit the company. Then your feasibility study determines that it is reasonable, it can be accomplished at a reasonable cost. And the business case should go further and include figures. So your business case, you state the problem, you have some kind of study to show that it's feasible, you have some idea showing how it will benefit the business, how long it will take, how much it will cost, how you're going to measure the success, and what the risks are that come with it, because perhaps it will fail and make things worse. There's always some risk. And there are programs just for this. I'm soon going to be using something called OneTrust. I'm going to a bunch of training in a couple of weeks. OneTrust is a platform you use for risk management, to automate all this. I think it's essentially a GRC platform, but I'm going to be learning it. All right. And then vendor management, like I say, you have, once you buy something, you have a relationship with the vendor, you have to get information about vulnerabilities and updates and support and replacement and all that jazz, so you have to be able to communicate with them. It's not like you just buy a product like a box of cookies and it's over. It's sort of like adopting a baby. You have an ongoing relationship with the vendor these days. And then you got your security program operations, and so we're going to talk about event monitoring and vulnerability management, and there will be 2 classes on that next semester. CNET 50 is just network security monitoring, and CNET 152 is incident response, both related to this. So these are future topics we're not going to get to this semester. So event monitoring, this is a big deal now. Everybody has logs, all your devices have logs, and most companies used to just not look at the logs, but that's no longer considered acceptable. Now, for acceptable security, you have to have real-time event monitoring. You have to be monitoring what happens on your network, and therefore you need centralized log management. And maybe this needs an E, is that why it's complaining? I wonder. All right. And so you send all the events to a log server system, which archives the events, and then you can feeds them into a security event and information manager system, and the most famous one is Splunk, the industry leader, and that's what I'm going to train people on in CNET 50. You learn how to use Splunk and set it up. Splunk is the leader, although some people are now saying QRadar is even better, although QRadar is much more expensive, and there is no free version to learn on. So Splunk is just a system. It's Google for log data. You send all your log data to the system, and now you can search here and find out what's going on all the machines on your network and track down attacks and figure out what to do about them. So threat intelligence is information about your attackers. And you can feed that into your SIEM system also, so it knows which IP addresses are associated with malware campaigns and what types of attacks different attackers are using and so on. A machine-readable list of this goes in. And then there's orchestration, which, like I say, I started writing SOAR projects and got a little bit through that, although I didn't get very far before I was moved on to another project. But SOAR is the Splunk product to do security orchestration, which is an automated process. When an attack comes in, it automatically does things to block the attack. And this is certainly important. Because if you use, as your program matures, first you ignore logs, then you look at them informally, then you set up an SIEM and start using the logs as you move up in maturity. Now you start responding to incidents. Here comes an attack, we're going to deal with it. Then you notice that you have many similar incidents, and then you move to SOAR, where you write a script to detect that kind of attack and take the standard response, so your incident response team and your security monitoring team do not have to waste their time in repetitive activities. They can focus on the new, more exotic things and let the normal things be handled by automated tasks. All right, and then there's vulnerability management. Network security monitoring is looking at the traffic on your network and figuring out if there's an attack in progress. I see a question here. What course are you going to teach about Splunk? Let me bring it up here. If you want to learn Splunk, I will be teaching it. The courses next semester are here. This is it, CNET 50, Network Security Monitoring. That's going to be Splunk certification, in fact. And incident response down here will largely be Velociraptor, which is an instant response platform. Good. I'll do it next semester, so check it out. One great thing about Splunk is that there's a very, very good free version, so students can totally practice on the full product. All right, now vulnerability management is dealing with weaknesses in your system that have not yet caused an attack. Examining. There. All right, so you examine your systems to see if there are exploitable vulnerabilities. So you typically do it with vulnerability scanners. It'll detect open ports, software versions, other exploitable vulnerabilities in web pages and so on. So you run a scanner and is the most common technique. And then you get a list of vulnerabilities and then you patch them. And you can scan your network, you can scan your source code, you can scan your applications with application security scanning. There's many ways to do it. And all of these will try to automatically simulate what attackers will do and notice when there are things that are wrong. So you typically scan them, you get your results. Most often they're rated on the CVSS system that rates vulnerabilities from 0 to 10 on how important they are. Anything below 5 is usually not very important, but a 9 or a 10 is really, really important. Those are things that mean somebody can easily take over your systems and they're going to be doing it. Like right now there's a Citrix 0-day that's a 10. So a bunch of people, their companies are getting hacked if they're running Citrix servers and they haven't been careful to keep them up to date. All right, so you scan your things, you figure out how important it is to you, then you deliver the scan results to the asset owners and tell them what they have to do. And usually what they have to do is put on patches, but sometimes they have to adjust configurations, turn off services, put things behind firewalls or VPNs that can't be patched. This is another very common thing. You often have vulnerabilities that you cannot patch. You have an expensive device that is no longer being supported, or it has a vulnerability and the vendor does not produce a patch in a timely manner, so you can't patch it, but you need that product. So in that case, what you do is you put protection outside it. If you have something like a vulnerable printer, then you don't connect the printer to the internet, you put it behind a firewall or a VPN concentrator so only trusted people can get on that network segment, and then you have a defense outside it, even though you can't patch the actual device itself. This is quite common. And that's the point of defense in depth, where you have layers of defenses. So even if you have a vulnerability at one level, you can put a compensating control at another level, which will help lower that risk. Although the risk never gets down to 0, of course, because there are 0 days, there are vulnerabilities that you don't know about, that are not in your scanner, and therefore you can't find them and you can't patch them. That's why people get hacked. Even if you do all the patching and updating that's available, your risk does not get to zero. Then the defense against 0 days, I should mention, is to have layers of defenses that use different techniques. So you hope that if, for example, your Citrix gateway has a vulnerability that hasn't been patched and the bad guys get in, then perhaps after that your network security monitoring will notice something suspicious, or the fact that you have removed unnecessary services on your network will make it so that they can't easily do horizontal movement through your network, or you'd like to have your network segmented into chunks, so even though they manage to spread something like ransomware in the network, it doesn't really propagate too far through the network, so it does less damage. This is the point. General security procedures can protect you even from these unknown and 0-day threats to some extent, because some later stage of the attack will be inhibited by your good security hygiene. So that's what I say. This is rates them from 0 to 10 on how dangerous these vulnerabilities are. And so you typically use an automated tool. You can also pay for a penetration test, which is intelligent humans getting in, and they will find more subtle problems that a tool can't find typically. And there's social engineering assessment, which measures, has your staff been trained well enough, or is it possible to trick your staff by lying to them into letting people in the building, revealing passwords, things like that. And a good social engineer is usually deadly. Rachel Toback is one of the big celebrities here. She won the social engineering contest a few times at DEF CON, now has her own company, and you see her on TV news and everything. She goes around to all the top companies, scaring them to death. She can talk them into doing all sorts of wrong things. And she demonstrates to companies how vulnerable they are because they don't train their staff to be suspicious and be careful and make sure they know who they're talking to and so on. People usually have something like a help desk, which they do something like outsource to a third country and don't really train them, and then the help desk is easily fooled. So that's the social engineering assessment would help you find that. Then, like I say, patch management is the big issue. You should have some automatic system of patching and some automated system of testing to make sure the patches are really deployed on all the systems. If you don't, there will be some systems that didn't get patched, and those then become open doors that let attackers in. So let's try this other Kahoot. All right. Yeah, Rachel Toback. I'll bring it up here. I think that's it, Rachel Toback. If you Google her, you'll find videos of her like on night shows hacking people with social engineering. She used to be, I think, in advertising, so she really knows how to play the game. She knows how to wear the right clothes and get the right lighting. Her talks and presentations look like real slick TV commercial, professional infomercial kind of things. She really knows how to reach the big shot corporate people with the look and the style, a very polished activity. I'm sure they pay her a pile of money because she really seems to have all the style and everything required, as well as being technically correct. It's not fake. She actually can call people on the phone and talk them into doing stupid things and demonstrate a real vulnerability for a company. After this Kahoot, I'll look her up. All right, anyway. All right, so what part of the business case includes a timeline? That's the plan. The plan includes a timeline. The feasibility is much more rudimentary, just to see if it's possible at all. All right. What does Splunk do? Security Information and Event Management. That's what it does. All right, good. See somebody found your name there. Good. All right. All right. And which item gives you a numerical value to a security flaw? That's it, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. All right. All right, and which one has the IP addresses of foreign attackers? All right, that's threat intelligence. Good. All right, that's Peter. Rolling again. All right, good. So I'm going to stop the recording.